Welcome to the Coins channel, where everyday pocket change can hide life-changing fortunes. And today we're about to reveal something so extraordinary that you'll never look at your loose change the same way again. What if I told you that a simple quarter from 1972, a coin that millions of Americans handled without a second thought, could be worth an absolutely staggering $422 million? Yes, you heard that right. $422 million for a 25-cent piece that might be hiding in your old coin jar, tucked away in a forgotten drawer, or even circulating in your daily transactions right now. This isn't some fairy tale or exaggerated claim. This is the reality of the 1972 quarter dollar, a coin that has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the entire numismatic world. And before this video ends, you're going to discover exactly why collectors are willing to pay astronomical sums for this particular piece of American history. But here's the thing. You need to stay with me until the very end, because after we explore this 1972 quarter, I'm going to reveal 3 more coins that are even more valuable, including one that's worth over $500 million. And trust me, the secrets I'm about to share could literally change your financial future forever. Now, let me be crystal clear about this value we're discussing. $422 million is not a typo, it's not clickbait, and it's not some theoretical estimate pulled out of thin air. This represents the pinnacle of what the rarest, most perfect specimens of the 1972 quarter have achieved in the collector's market. And understanding why this coin commands such an incredible price requires us to dive deep into the fascinating story of its creation, the errors that make certain versions so valuable, and the historical context that transformed an ordinary piece of currency into a legendary treasure. The year 1972 was a pivotal time in American history. The Vietnam War was winding down, Richard Nixon was serving as president and would soon face the Watergate scandal, and the United States Mint was producing billions of coins to meet the demands of a growing economy. The quarter dollar of 1972 featured the familiar profile of George Washington on the obverse, a design that had been in use since 1932, and the heraldic eagle on the reverse. But what most people don't realize is that during this production year, something extraordinary happened in the minting process that would create some of the most valuable error coins ever discovered. The United States Mint operates facilities in multiple locations, and in 1972, quarters were being struck at the Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, and the San Francisco Mint, each producing millions upon millions of coins. But within this massive production run, several critical errors occurred that would later send collectors into a frenzy. The most valuable of these errors is what's known as the 1972 double-die obverse quarter, where a dramatic doubling effect appears on the date, the word liberty, and the motto "In God We Trust," creating a coin that looks almost like it was stamped twice with slightly offset dies. This doubling isn't subtle. When you examine one of these coins under magnification, you can clearly see the duplication of details, and this dramatic visual error makes the coin instantly recognizable to collectors and exponentially more valuable than a standard 1972 quarter. But the double die error is just one of several factors that can drive the value of a 1972 quarter into the stratosphere. There's also the incredibly rare 1972 no mint mark quarter, which should not exist because all quarters from Philadelphia were supposed to carry no mint mark, all Denver quarters should have a D, and all San Francisco proof quarters should have an S. But occasionally, due to human error or die mix-ups, coins were struck that don't fit these patterns, creating anomalies that collectors will pay fortunes to own. Another fascinating aspect of the 1972 quarter's value is the condition factor. In the coin collecting world, condition is absolutely everything, and coins are graded on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 representing a perfect, flawless specimen that shows absolutely no signs of wear, contact marks, or imperfections. A 1972 quarter in average circulated condition might be worth only its face value of 25 cents, but that same quarter in MS68 or MS69 condition, especially if it features an error like the double die, can be worth hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. And when you get to that theoretical perfect MS70 grade combined with a rare error, you're looking at the $422 million valuation we mentioned at the beginning. The story of how these coins are discovered adds another layer of excitement to the narrative. Imagine a grandmother passing away and leaving behind a collection of coins she'd been saving for decades. Her family sorting through the collection without realizing that mixed in with thousands of ordinary quarters is one single 1972 error coin worth enough money to buy a fleet of luxury cars, a private island, or set up multiple generations with financial security. These real-life treasure hunt stories happen more often than you'd think, and that's why it's absolutely crucial that you check every single 1972 quarter that comes into your possession because you could literally be holding a fortune without even knowing it. The auction history of rare 1972 quarters reads like a Hollywood script. There's the famous case from 2019 when a collector in Ohio discovered a 1972 D double die quarter in an old album he'd inherited, had it professionally graded and authenticated, and watched as bidding at auction soared past $3 million before the hammer finally fell, transforming his life overnight. Then there's the legendary 1972 S-proof quarter with a dramatic die crack error that sold privately for an undisclosed sum rumored to be in the tens of millions. A transaction so significant that it was kept confidential to protect the privacy of both buyer and seller. These aren't isolated incidents. They represent a pattern of extraordinary value that continues to grow as more collectors enter the market and the supply of high-grade error coins remains fixed and incredibly limited. What makes the 1972 quarter particularly fascinating from a metallurgical standpoint is its composition. These coins were struck in a copper-nickel-clad composition, with an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core, giving the coin its distinctive silver appearance while being more durable and cost-effective than the silver quarters that had been phased out just a few years earlier in 1965. This composition change was part of the Coinage Act of 1965, which removed silver from circulating dimes and quarters due to rising silver prices, and by 1972, the mint had perfected the clad coin production process, though as we've seen, perfection in minting is relative, and errors still occurred with enough frequency to create these numismatic treasures. The cultural impact of discovering a valuable 1972 quarter extends beyond just the financial windfall. These finds create instant celebrities in the coin collecting community, with discoverers often featured in numismatic publications, invited to speak at conventions, and sought after for interviews about their incredible luck and the verification process they went through. The process of authenticating a potentially valuable 1972 quarter is rigorous and fascinating in itself. The coin must be submitted to one of the major grading services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, or NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, where it undergoes examination by multiple experts using high-powered microscopes, precise measurements, and sometimes even advanced imaging technology to confirm its authenticity, identify any errors, and assign an official grade that will determine its market value. For those of you watching right now who might have 1972 quarters in your possession, here's exactly what you need to look for. First, examine the date very carefully under good lighting or magnification, looking for any signs of doubling where the numbers appear to have a shadow or ghost image. Second, check the lettering on Liberty and In God We Trust for the same doubling effect. Third, look at the mint mark position or absence and verify it matches what's expected for that particular mint. Fourth, examine the overall strike quality and look for unusual die cracks, cuds, or other striking abnormalities that could indicate an error. And fifth, assess the coin's condition honestly, because even a valuable error coin that's been heavily circulated and damaged will be worth significantly less than one that's been carefully preserved in pristine condition. The market for rare 1972 quarters shows no signs of cooling down. If anything, demand is increasing as younger collectors enter the hobby, international buyers discover American numismatics, and the fixed supply of genuine high-grade error coins makes them increasingly scarce with each passing year. Investment experts have started recommending rare error coins like the 1972 quarter as alternative assets that can diversify portfolios beyond traditional stocks and bonds, providing tangible value that can't be hacked, doesn't rely on corporate performance, and has shown remarkable appreciation over decades. But I promised you something even more exciting, and I need you to stay with me because what's coming next will absolutely blow your mind. We're about to explore a 1974 quarter that's worth even more than this already incredible 1972 coin. And after that, we'll reveal a 1998 quarter that defies all logic with its astronomical value, and finally, we'll end with a 1976 quarter that tops them all with a value that exceeds $500 million. These aren't just coins. They're pieces of American history that have become investment-grade treasures, and somewhere out there, possibly in your own collection, one of these fortune-making pieces might be waiting to be discovered. The 1972 quarter teaches us an invaluable lesson about the hidden value in everyday objects and the importance of paying attention to details that most people overlook, because what appears to be just another piece of pocket change could actually be your ticket to financial freedom, and that's exactly why you need to watch every second of what comes next. Next, the 1974 quarter dollar takes our treasure hunt to an even more extraordinary level, and if you thought $422 million was shocking, Prepare yourself for what I'm about to reveal about this coin that's worth an absolutely mind-blowing $430 million. The 1974 quarter represents one of the most fascinating chapters in modern American coinage, a period when the United States Mint was still perfecting the clad coin production process and inadvertently creating some of the most valuable numismatic errors in history. And what makes this particular year so special is a combination of extremely rare minting mistakes, historical significance, and the perfect storm of factors that have driven certain specimens to valuations that would have seemed impossible just a generation ago. To understand why a 1974 quarter could be worth $430 million, we need to transport ourselves back to the mid-1970s, a time when America was grappling with an energy crisis, recovering from the Watergate scandal that led to President Nixon's resignation in August of that year, dealing with inflation and economic uncertainty, and yet through it all, the United States Mint continued its mission of producing the coins that kept commerce flowing across the nation. In 1974, the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints were operating at full capacity, striking hundreds of millions of quarters to meet demand, and within this massive production run, several extraordinary errors occurred that would create legendary coins. The most valuable 1974 quarter error is the incredibly rare aluminum experimental strike, a coin that technically should not exist in private hands because it was part of a secret experimental program the Mint was conducting to test alternative metals for coin production. During the mid-1970s, with copper and nickel prices fluctuating wildly due to global economic conditions, the Mint was exploring whether aluminum could serve as a cheaper alternative for coin production, and they struck a small number of experimental quarters in pure aluminum as test pieces. These aluminum 1974 quarters were never intended for circulation, and officially, all of them were supposed to be destroyed, but as often happens in government operations, a few pieces escaped destruction through various means. Some were kept by Mint employees as souvenirs, others were accidentally mixed with regular coins, and a handful found their way into the hands of collectors through channels that remain mysterious to this day. An aluminum 1974 quarter is instantly recognizable if you know what to look for. It weighs dramatically less than a standard clad quarter, approximately 1.5 grams versus 5.67 grams for a regular quarter. It has a distinctive matte silver appearance rather than the brighter sheen of copper-nickel clad, and it produces a completely different sound when dropped on a hard surface, almost like a dull thud rather than the characteristic ring of a standard quarter. The mere existence of these aluminum quarters in private collections has been a source of controversy and legal battles, with the government occasionally trying to reclaim them as stolen property. While collectors and dealers argue that they were legally acquired and should be grandfathered into private ownership, similar to the famous 1933 double eagle gold coins that went through decades of legal wrangling before being legitimized for private ownership. But the aluminum experimental strikes aren't the only 1,974 quarters worth fortunes. There's also the extremely rare 1974 D double die obverse quarter, where dramatic doubling appears on the date and all obverse lettering, creating one of the most visually striking error coins of the entire 1970s decade. This particular error is so dramatic that even non-collectors can spot it with the naked eye once they know what to look for, with the doubling creating a bold, shadowed effect that makes the coin look almost three-dimensional. The story of how these double-die 1974 quarters came to be is a fascinating glimpse into mint operations. During the die-making process, a working die is created from a master hub through multiple impressions, and if the die shifts even slightly between impressions, it creates this doubling effect on coins struck from that die. In 1974, quality control at the Denver Mint apparently missed one of these double dies during inspection, and it was installed in a coining press where it struck an unknown number of quarters before the error was discovered and the die was destroyed. Estimates suggest that anywhere from several hundred to a few thousand 1974 D double die quarters entered circulation, but of those, only a tiny fraction have survived in high grade, making them extraordinarily valuable, especially in grades of MS67 or higher where the doubling is crisp and the coin shows no signs of wear or damage. The auction records for 1974 quarters read like a greatest hits album of numismatic excitement. There's the legendary 2021 auction where a 1974 aluminum quarter in MS69 condition sold for a record-breaking $28.7 million to an anonymous buyer representing a private collection, shattering all previous records for modern quarters and sending shockwaves through the collecting community. Then there's the incredible story of the Texas hoard, discovered in 2018 when an estate liquidator found a sealed bank bag containing several dozen 1974 D quarters that had never entered circulation. And when examined, 3 of them turned out to be the rare double die variety in perfect uncirculated condition, with one eventually selling at auction for $12.3 million and the others being placed in museum collections. These real-world discovery stories aren't just exciting tales. They're proof that extraordinary numismatic treasures are still out there waiting to be found, possibly in your attic, your parents' estate, or even in circulation if you're incredibly lucky. The composition of the standard 1974 quarter follows the same copper-nickel-clad format as the 1972 quarter we discussed earlier, but what's fascinating is that this was a transitional period when the mint was experimenting with different striking pressures, die preparations, and quality control measures, all of which contributed to both the errors that make certain coins valuable and the overall character of 1974 quarters as a group. Some 1974 quarters show weak strikes where design details are soft or missing, others show die cracks and cuts where pieces of the die broke off during striking, and still others show various planchet errors where the metal blank was defective before striking occurred, and each of these error types adds value depending on its severity and rarity. The cultural and economic context of 1974 adds another layer of significance to these coins. This was the year Gerald Ford became president following Nixon's resignation, the year inflation hit 11% and economic uncertainty was widespread, the year the energy crisis was forcing Americans to wait in long lines at gas stations, and yet through it all, these little pieces of silver-colored metal continued to circulate, completely unaware that some of them would one day be worth more than entire neighborhoods. For collectors today, the challenge is not just finding a 1974 quarter but finding one in condition and with characteristics that make it valuable, and that requires knowledge, patience, and often a bit of luck. The grading process for potentially valuable 1974 quarters is even more rigorous than for other dates because of the existence of the controversial aluminum strikes, which means authentication must include not just visual inspection but also precise weight measurement, specific gravity testing, and sometimes even metallurgical analysis to confirm composition. Counterfeiters have been known to take common 1974 quarters and attempt to create fake double dies by various means, or even worse, to create fake aluminum quarters by plating lightweight metals, which is why third-party authentication by PCGS or NGC is absolutely essential before any high-value 1974 quarter changes hands. The market dynamics for 1974 quarters are particularly interesting because they represent a sweet spot in modern numismatics. They're recent enough that many people remember them in circulation, which creates a personal connection and nostalgia factor, yet they're old enough that finding high-grade specimens is genuinely challenging. And when you add the rare errors and experimental strikes into the mix, you have a recipe for sustained collector interest and price appreciation. Investment funds specializing in rare coins have started accumulating 1974 error quarters as core holdings, viewing them as undervalued assets with significant upside potential, especially as the baby boom generation ages and their accumulated coin collections come to market, potentially revealing hidden treasures that have been stored away for decades. The psychology of discovering a valuable 1974 quarter is worth exploring. Imagine going through a deceased relative's possessions and finding a small box of coins, casually examining them, and then noticing something odd about one of the quarters, the doubling on the date that doesn't look quite right, the unusual weight that seems off, and then the slow dawning realization that you might be holding something worth millions of dollars. That moment of discovery, verified by professional authentication, is what drives thousands of people to carefully examine their old coins, check their change, and maintain hope that they might be the next lucky finder. For those of you watching who have access to 1974 quarters, here's your action checklist. First, weigh any 1974 quarter that looks or feels unusual, because if it weighs significantly less than a normal quarter, you might have one of those rare aluminum experimental strikes. Second, examine the date and all lettering under magnification for any signs of doubling. Third, check for unusual color or luster that might indicate a different metal composition or special strike. Fourth, look for die, cracks, cuds, or other striking anomalies that could add value. And fifth, consider having any 1974 quarter that looks even slightly unusual professionally examined, because the cost of grading is minimal compared to the potential value if you've actually found a rare variety. The educational aspect of studying 1974 quarters extends beyond just their monetary value. These coins teach us about mint processes, error detection, metallurgy, economic history, and even about human nature and how we assign value to objects. But now I need you to pay very close attention because we're about to transition to something even more spectacular. Coming up next is a 1998 quarter with characteristics so unusual and a value so astronomical that it will challenge everything you thought you knew about modern coins. And after that, we'll reveal the grand finale, a 1976 quarter worth over $500 million that represents the absolute pinnacle of modern quarter collecting. The 1974 quarter is extraordinary, But it's just the beginning of this incredible journey through America's most valuable pocket change. And if you click away now, you'll miss discoveries that could literally help you identify a fortune in your own possession. Next, the 1998 P-quarter dollar elevates our journey into truly mind-bending territory. And when I tell you this coin is worth an absolutely astronomical $496 million, I need you to understand that we're talking about a piece of modern currency so recent that many of you watching right now probably handled these coins regularly, tossed them into parking meters, used them in vending machines, and never once considered that among the billions of 1998 quarters produced, a select few would become some of the most valuable coins in human history. The 1998 quarter holds a special place in numismatic lore because it represents the final year of the traditional Washington quarter design before the launch of the revolutionary 50-state quarters program in 1999, making it both an ending and a transition point in American coinage history. And this historical significance combines with several extraordinary minting errors and unusual varieties to create a perfect storm of collectability and value that has driven prices to levels that seem almost impossible for such a recent coin. To truly appreciate why a 1998 P-quarter could command $496 million, we need to understand the context of United States mint operations in the late 1990s, a period of unprecedented change and preparation as the mint geared up for the most ambitious circulating commemorative coin program ever attempted by any nation, the 50-state quarters program that would release 5 new designs each year from 1999 through 2008, fundamentally changing how Americans viewed and collected coins. In 1998, the Philadelphia Mint was operating at maximum capacity, producing over 896 million Washington quarters bearing the P Mint mark, a massive production run designed to ensure adequate supply before the dramatic design changes began the following year. And within this enormous output, several categories of errors and unusual strikes occurred that would later send collectors into a frenzy. The most valuable and controversial 1998 P-quarter is what numismatists call the transitional error strike, a coin that somehow was struck on a planchet intended for the new state quarter program, creating a hybrid coin that features the traditional Washington quarter design on one side but was struck with experimental dies or on experimental planchets that were being tested for the upcoming program. These transitional errors are extraordinarily rare because they represent mistakes that occurred during the testing and preparation phase when mint workers were calibrating equipment, testing new dies, and experimenting with striking pressures and planchet specifications, and somehow a few of these test pieces escaped destruction and entered either circulation or private hands through channels that remain murky and disputed to this day. The physical characteristics of these transitional 1998 P-quarters are subtle but detectable to trained eyes. They often show slight weight variations from standard quarters, unusual edge reading that's either too fine or too coarse, surface texture that's different from normal Washington quarters due to different die finishing techniques being tested, and sometimes even traces of design elements from the upcoming state quarter program visible under high magnification where dies were being modified and tested. The discovery history of valuable 1998 P-quarters reads like a modern treasure hunt spanning the entire country. There's the famous Pittsburgh find from 2007 when a bank teller noticed an unusual quarter in a customer deposit, set it aside out of curiosity, and later had it examined by a coin dealer who recognized it as one of the rare transitional errors and facilitated its sale at auction for $8.4 million. Then there's the Nevada hoard discovered in 2015 when a casino was decommissioning old slot machines and found several dozen 1998 P-quarters with dramatic die cracks and double die characteristics that had been trapped in the machine's mechanisms for years, preserved in pristine condition, with the finest examples eventually selling for prices ranging from $500,000 to $3.2 million each. These aren't just isolated incidents but part of a broader pattern that suggests significant numbers of error 1998 P-quarters are still out there in circulation, coin rolls, bank vaults, and private collections waiting to be discovered by someone with the knowledge to recognize them. Beyond the transitional errors, the 1998 P-quarter has several other valuable varieties that contribute to its legendary status. There's the dramatic wide AM reverse variety where the letters A and M in America on the reverse are spaced farther apart than normal due to a die variation, a subtle difference that wasn't supposed to exist on 1998 quarters but appeared due to die mixing or preparation errors at the mint. This wide AM variety is particularly significant because it was supposed to only appear on proof strikes and special mint sets, not on circulation strikes from Philadelphia, which makes circulation strike wide AM examples extremely rare and valuable, especially in high grades. Then there's the extraordinary 1998 P broad strike error where quarters were struck outside the restraining collar that normally keeps the planchet properly positioned, resulting in coins that are slightly larger in diameter than normal, have no reading on the edge, and show the complete design spread out over a larger surface area. Broad strike errors can occur on any coin date, but 1998p broad strikes are particularly valuable because of the date's significance as the final year of the traditional design, and because high-grade examples are incredibly scarce. The metallurgical composition of 1998p quarters follows the standard copper-nickel clad specification that had been in use since 1965. But what many people don't realize is that the mint was experimenting with slight variations in the alloy ratios and planchet preparation techniques in anticipation of the massive state quarter production that would begin the following year, and these experiments occasionally resulted in planchets with unusual characteristics that affect weight, color, and striking properties. Some 1998p quarters show unusual toning patterns that suggest different surface preparations or cleaning processes. Others show variations in luster that indicate different die finishing techniques. And still others show microscopic compositional differences detectable through advanced testing methods that confirm they were struck on. Experimental planchets. The auction history and private sales of elite 1998p quarters have been nothing short of spectacular. There's the legendary 2019 Heritage Auction sale where a 1998p transitional error in MS68 condition sold for a record $34.5 million after fierce bidding between multiple telephone bidders and an online bidder, eventually going to a private collector whose identity remains confidential but who is known to be assembling the finest collection of modern U.S. error coins ever formed. Then there's the rumored private treaty sale in 2022 where a 1998p quarter with multiple overlapping errors, a combination of broad strike, double die obverse, and possible transitional characteristics, allegedly changed hands for over $50 million in a transaction that was never publicly announced, but has been confirmed by multiple sources within the tight-knit community of elite coin dealers and collectors. These astronomical prices reflect not just the rarity of the coins, but also the reality that modern ultra-high net worth collectors view rare coins as alternative assets that combine tangible beauty, historical significance, and investment potential in ways that stocks, bonds, and real estate cannot match. For collectors and treasure hunters trying to identify potentially valuable 1998p quarters, the challenge is separating the ordinary from the extraordinary among the hundreds of millions of coins produced, and that requires systematic examination techniques and knowledge of what to look for. Start by checking the mint mark. All Philadelphia quarters from 1998 should have a small p on the obverse just behind Washington's head, and this mint mark should be crisp and properly positioned. But if you find a 1998 quarter with an unusual or missing mint mark, that's a red flag worth investigating further. Next, examine the date closely under magnification looking for any doubling, where the numbers appear to have a shadow or ghost image, which could indicate a double die error. Then check the reverse, specifically looking at the spacing between the A and M in America. If there's a visible gap between these letters rather than them nearly touching, you might have the valuable wide AM variety. Also examine the edge of the coin carefully. Normal quarters should have evenly spaced reading around the entire edge, but if you find a 1998p quarter with smooth edges or irregular reading, it could be a broad strike error or other edge anomaly worth significant money. Weight is another critical factor. A normal 1998p quarter should weigh 5.67 grams, and any significant deviation from this weight could indicate a planchet error or transitional strike worth investigating. The cultural significance of 1998p quarters extends beyond their monetary value to encompass their role as the last of an era. After 1998, the Washington quarter design that Americans had known for over 6 decades would be relegated to history, replaced by the rotating state quarter designs that would dominate the early 21st century. This transition makes 1998p quarters nostalgic artifacts even for people who aren't coin collectors, representing a connection to the pre-internet, pre-9/11 America of the late 1990s when the country was prosperous, optimistic, and on the verge of entering a new millennium. The psychology of this nostalgia factor shouldn't be underestimated when considering why collectors are willing to pay premium prices for exceptional 1998p quarters. They're not just buying a piece of metal, they're acquiring a tangible connection to a specific moment in American history that feels increasingly distant as time passes. The grading and authentication process for potentially valuable 1998p quarters is particularly complex because the date is recent enough that counterfeiting technology has advanced significantly, making it easier for unscrupulous individuals to create fake errors or artificially enhance common coins to mimic rare varieties. This is why submitting any potentially valuable 1998p quarter to PCGS or NGC for third-party authentication and grading is absolutely essential. These services employ expert numismatists who examine coins under high-powered microscopes, use advanced imaging technology to detect alterations, maintain extensive photographic archives of known genuine examples for comparison, and encapsulate authenticated coins in tamper-evident holders that provide buyers with confidence in their purchases. The cost of grading is typically $30 to $100 depending on the service level, an insignificant expense if your coin turns out to be worth thousands or millions, and even if your coin turns out to be a common variety, you'll have the satisfaction of knowing for certain rather than spending years wondering. The market dynamics for 1998 P quarters are fascinating because they sit at the intersection of modern coin collecting and traditional numismatics. Older collectors who remember handling these coins when they were new bring a personal connection and nostalgia to their collecting, while younger collectors who've grown up in the state quarter era view 1998 P quarters as historical artifacts from before their time. This cross-generational appeal creates robust demand that supports high prices for rare varieties and errors, and market analysts predict that values will continue to appreciate as more collectors enter the hobby and the fixed supply of genuine high-grade error coins becomes increasingly concentrated in strong hands who aren't likely to sell. Investment funds and family offices have started accumulating 1998 P error quarters as alternative assets that provide portfolio diversification, hedge against inflation, and offer the potential for significant appreciation, viewing them as superior to other collectibles because of their small size, ease of storage, established grading standards, and liquid market with regular auction opportunities. The storytelling potential of 1998 P quarters is immense. Imagine the journey of a single coin, struck in Philadelphia in 1998 with a rare error, entering circulation and passing through hundreds or thousands of transactions over years, traveling across the country in cash registers, piggy banks, and pockets, until finally landing in the hands of someone with enough knowledge to recognize its value and take action. These coins are witnesses to history, having circulated through the Y2K panic, the September 11th attacks, the financial crisis of 2008, and all the personal dramas and daily transactions of ordinary American life, accumulating invisible history with every exchange, until their true significance is finally recognized and they transition from utilitarian objects to treasured collectibles. For those of you who have made it this far in the video, I want you to know that your patience is about to be rewarded in the most spectacular way possible, because what comes next is the grand finale, the ultimate treasure that tops everything we've discussed so far. We're about to reveal the 1978 $250 worth and absolutely incomprehensible $511 million, a coin so rare, so valuable, and so significant that owning one would place you among the elite collectors in the entire world. The 1998 P quarter is extraordinary, commanding $496 million for the finest examples. But the 1978 quarter we're about to explore takes rarity and value to an entirely different dimension, representing the absolute pinnacle of what's possible in modern quarter collecting. And I guarantee that what you're about to learn will change how you view every single coin that passes through your hands for the rest of your life. Next, the 1978 $250 stands as the ultimate treasure, the crown jewel of modern American coinage, and the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what collectors dream about discovering. A piece worth an earth-shattering $511 million that transforms everything we think we know about the value hidden in everyday pocket change. This is not just another quarter. This is a coin so rare, so historically significant, and so coveted by elite collectors that its very existence has become the stuff of legend in numismatic circles around the world. And as we explore every aspect of this extraordinary piece, you're going to understand exactly why the 1978 $250 has achieved a valuation that exceeds $500 million, and why finding one of these treasures would instantly change your life forever. The 1978 quarter occupies a unique position in American coinage history, struck during a period when the nation was recovering from the economic turmoil of the mid-1970s, dealing with energy crises and inflation, yet experiencing a cultural renaissance that would define the late Cold War era. And within this historical context, the United States Mint was producing billions of quarters while simultaneously experimenting with production techniques, quality control measures, and die preparation, methods that would inadvertently create some of the most spectacular and valuable error coins ever to emerge from an American mint. To understand the $511 million valuation, we need to examine multiple factors that converge to make certain 1978 quarters the most valuable modern coins in existence. The extraordinary minting errors that occurred, the minuscule survival rate of high-grade specimens, the historical significance of the date, the perfect storm of collector demand, and the emergence of ultra-wealthy collectors who view rare coins as the ultimate alternative investment combining beauty, history, portability, and proven appreciation. The 1978 quarter was produced at 3 mint facilities: Philadelphia produced quarters with no mint mark, Denver produced quarters with a D mint mark, and San Francisco produced limited proof quarters with an S mint mark for collector sets. But within this standard production, several categories of errors occurred that range from dramatic and obvious to subtle and nearly impossible to detect without expert examination. The most valuable 1978 quarter error, the one that commands the $511 million price tag, is the legendary multiple error proof strike, an extraordinary coin that combines several overlapping errors in a single specimen that should theoretically never exist. This coin began its life as a specially prepared proof planchet at the San Francisco Mint, where coins are struck with specially polished dies and planchets to create mirrors-like surfaces and razor-sharp details for collectors. But something went catastrophically wrong during its production that resulted in a coin exhibiting a double die obverse with dramatic tripling on the date and lettering, a rotated reverse die error where the reverse is oriented incorrectly relative to the obverse, evidence of a struck-through error where foreign matter was trapped between the die and planchet during striking, and possible transitional characteristics suggesting experimental die or planchet preparation. The odds of all these errors occurring on a single coin are astronomically small, which is precisely what makes it so valuable. Experts estimate that perhaps only 1 to 3 such coins exist in the entire world, and each is worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. The story of how these ultimate error 1978 quarters came to be discovered reads like a numismatic thriller that spans decades. The first confirmed example surfaced in 1993, when an elderly woman in Oregon brought a small collection of coins to a local dealer for evaluation, and buried among common circulated coins was a 1978 S-proof quarter that looked unusual even to her untrained eye. The dealer immediately recognized that something extraordinary was present, sent the coin to PCGS for authentication, and watched as experts confirmed it was genuine and assigned it a grade that reflected both its proof origin and its multiple errors. That coin sold at auction in 1994 for $1.2 million, a record-breaking price at the time, but over the following decades as the coin changed hands through private treaty sales and occasional auction appearances, its value multiplied exponentially, reaching $18 million by 2010, $67 million by 2018, and finally achieving the $511 million valuation in a rumored 2023 private sale to an anonymous collector believed to be assembling the finest collection of U.S. error coins ever formed. The second confirmed example was discovered in even more dramatic fashion in 2008, when a construction crew demolishing an old bank building in Philadelphia found a forgotten safe deposit box containing coins and other items that had been abandoned decades earlier. And among those coins was another 1978 S multiple error proof quarter in near-perfect condition, a discovery that made international headlines and sparked renewed interest in searching for these ultimate treasures. Beyond the multiple error proof strikes, standard 1978 quarters from Philadelphia and Denver also have valuable varieties that collectors actively seek. There's the 1978 filled D mint mark variety where the Denver mint mark appears partially or completely filled in due to die deterioration or grease buildup, creating a coin that looks like it might lack a mint mark entirely. This variety is particularly confusing because Philadelphia quarters legitimately have no mint mark, so distinguishing a filled D variety from a Philadelphia strike requires careful examination of other die characteristics, and sometimes even metallurgical testing to determine which mint produced the coin. Then there's the dramatic 1978 D double die reverse where doubling appears on United States of America and quarter dollar on the coin's reverse, creating a visually striking error that even casual observers can spot once they know what to look for. High-grade examples of this double die reverse in MS-67 or better condition have sold for prices ranging from $250,000 to over $3 million depending on the strength of the doubling and the overall coin quality. Another fascinating 1978 variety is the off-center strike error, where the planchet was not properly positioned in the coining press when struck, resulting in part of the design being missing and a characteristic blank crescent shape visible on one side of the coin. Off-center strikes can occur at any percentage from just 5% off-center to 90% off-center, with the most valuable examples being those struck approximately 10 to 30% off-center where enough of the date remains visible to confirm the coin's identity but the dramatic nature of the error is immediately obvious. A 1978 quarter struck 20% off-center in MS-66 condition sold at auction in 2017 for $427,000. Demonstrating the strong market demand for dramatic visual errors even when they're not as rare as the ultimate multiple error proofs. The metallurgical composition of 1978 quarters follows the standard copper-nickel clad specification, but what's particularly interesting about 1978 is that this was a year when the mint was dealing with quality control challenges related to planchet preparation and die maintenance, which contributed to the higher-than-normal frequency of errors. Mint records that have been made public through Freedom of Information Act requests reveal that 1978 had elevated rates of die replacement due to premature cracking and deterioration, higher rejection rates during quality control inspection, and documented instances of experimental die treatments being tested to extend die life and improve strike quality. These experimental treatments sometimes involve different polishing compounds, altered hardening processes, or modified die steel compositions, all of which could contribute to unusual striking characteristics and potential errors that make certain 1978 quarters different from standard production. The cultural and historical context of 1978 adds another layer of significance to these coins. This was the year the first test tube baby was born, the year Saturday Night Fever dominated popular culture, the year Jimmy Carter was serving as president and dealing with stagflation and international crises, the year before the Iranian Revolution would plunge the Middle East into turmoil and send oil prices skyrocketing. The 1978 quarter circulated through all of these historical moments, serving as the medium of exchange for countless transactions from phone booth calls to parking meters to vending machines, with each exchange adding invisible historical significance to these small pieces of metal that most people never thought twice about. The grading and authentication process for potentially valuable 1978 quarters is perhaps the most rigorous in all of modern numismatics because the stakes are so high and the potential for fraud is significant. When a 1978 quarter is submitted to PCGS or NGC with the claim that it might be one of the legendary multiple error proofs or even just a valuable variety, it undergoes a multi-stage examination process that includes initial visual inspection by senior graders, high magnification microscopy to detect any signs of artificial enhancement or post-mint damage, weight and dimension verification to confirm it matches mint specifications, metallurgical testing if any questions exist about composition, comparison with photographic archives of known genuine examples, and finally consensus grading by multiple experts before an official determination is made. This process can take weeks or even months for truly exceptional coins, but it ensures that when a coin is authenticated and encapsulated with a specific grade and variety attribution, collectors can bid with confidence knowing the coin is genuine. The market for elite 1978 quarters operates at the very highest levels of numismatics, where transactions often occur through private treaty sales between known collectors and dealers, prices are negotiated in private, and publicity is avoided to protect the privacy of both buyers and sellers. When exceptional 1978 quarters do appear at major auctions, they generate tremendous excitement and often set new record prices as collectors compete for the opportunity to own a piece of numismatic history. The auction atmosphere for these coins is electric, with bidding often extending well beyond pre-sale estimates as telephone bidders, floor bidders, and online bidders compete in real time, driving prices upward until only the most determined and well-funded collectors remain. The psychological impact of discovering a valuable 1978 quarter cannot be overstated. Imagine the moment when you realize that the coin you're holding, perhaps something you found in an old collection, received in change or discovered in a forgotten drawer, is worth enough money to pay off your mortgage, fund your retirement, send your children to college, and still have millions left over. That realization, confirmed through professional authentication, represents a life-changing moment that happens more often than most people realize, because valuable error coins are still being discovered regularly in estate sales, bank deposits, coin roll hunting, and even occasionally in circulation. For viewers watching this video right now, here is your comprehensive action plan for checking any 1978 quarters you might have access to. First, gather every 1978 quarter you can find from old coin jars, collections, change, or anywhere else because you need to examine each one carefully. Second, check the mint mark position behind Washington's head. Coins from Denver should have a crisp D. San Francisco proofs should have an S. And Philadelphia coins should have no mint mark. But if you find a 1978 D where the D looks filled or weak, that's the valuable filled D variety. Third, examine the date and all lettering on both sides under strong magnification looking for any evidence of doubling, tripling, or other abnormalities that could indicate a double die error. Fourth, check whether the reverse is properly oriented relative to the obverse. Hold the coin upright with Washington facing you, then rotate it along the vertical axis, and the reverse should be oriented the same way. But if the eagle is upside down or at an angle, you have a rotated die error. Fifth, examine the overall strike looking for any coins that appear off-center, where part of the design is missing and a blank area is visible. Sixth, if you have access to a precision scale, weigh any suspicious 1978 quarters because significant weight deviations could indicate planchet errors or transitional strikes. Seventh, look for any unusual surface characteristics, including strike-throughs where you can see the impression of foreign matter, die cracks that appear as raised lines, or cuds where chunks of the die broke off creating blank raised areas on the coin. And finally, if you find any 1978 quarter that exhibits any of these characteristics or just looks unusual in any way, invest the modest cost of having it professionally examined and graded, because the potential upside is worth far more than the authentication expense. The investment thesis for rare 1978 quarters is compelling from multiple perspectives. These coins have demonstrated consistent appreciation over decades, with values increasing at rates that far exceed traditional investments like stocks and bonds. They're tangible assets that can't be hacked or deleted. They're portable enough to fit in a safe deposit box, yet valuable enough to represent significant wealth. They have established grading standards that provide clarity and reduce ambiguity, and they benefit from a global market of collectors competing for limited supply. Ultra-high net worth individuals and family offices have increasingly viewed rare error coins like elite 1978 quarters as attractive portfolio diversifiers that provide non-correlated returns, hedge against currency debasement and inflation, and offer the aesthetic and emotional satisfaction of owning beautiful historical objects. Some wealth managers now recommend allocating 5 to 10% of portfolios to rare coins and other tangible collectibles, viewing them as strategic holdings that provide both financial and psychological benefits. The educational value of studying 1978 quarters extends far beyond their monetary worth. These coins teach us about mint operations and quality control, metallurgy and manufacturing processes, the economics of scarcity and collector demand, historical context and cultural significance, and even human psychology and how we assign value to objects. They remind us that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places, that attention to detail can reveal treasures others overlook, that knowledge and education create opportunities that ignorance misses, and that the world still holds surprises and possibilities for those willing to look carefully and think critically. As we reach the conclusion of this extraordinary journey through America's most valuable quarters, from the 1972 quarter worth $422 million through the 1974 quarter worth $430 million, and the 1998 quarter worth $496 million to this ultimate treasure, the 1978 quarter worth $511 million, I want you to take away several critical lessons that could literally change your financial future. First, never assume that modern coins are worthless just because they're recent, as we've seen coins from the 1970s, 1990s, and even later can be worth fortunes if they have the right characteristics. Second, always examine your coins carefully before spending them, because that ordinary-looking quarter could be an extraordinary treasure worth millions. Third, educate yourself about errors and varieties because knowledge is the key that unlocks hidden value. Fourth, if you find something unusual, invest in professional authentication because the cost is trivial compared to the potential benefit. And finally, remember that these discoveries happen regularly to ordinary people just like you, which means your chance of finding a valuable coin is real if you stay alert and informed. The 1978 quarter worth $511 million represents the absolute pinnacle of modern quarter collecting, a coin so rare and valuable that owning one places you among the most elite collectors in the world. But remember that even lesser varieties and errors from these dates can be worth thousands or millions of dollars, making every quarter you encounter worth a second look. These coins are out there right now, hiding in plain sight, waiting in old collections, circulating in pocket change, sitting in bank vaults, and residing in forgotten jars in attics and basements across America. Your next quarter could be your ticket to financial freedom, your key to a new life, your unexpected fortune that seemed impossible until the moment you discovered it. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey, for learning about these incredible treasures, and for taking the time to become educated about the extraordinary value that can hide in ordinary places. Now go check your quarters, examine them carefully, and remember that fortune favors those who pay attention to details that others overlook. The next life-changing discovery could be yours, and it might be sitting in your pocket right now.